At 68 years old, I never imagined I'd be sitting in a lawyer's office, listening to my own son explain why keeping me alive was becoming too much of a financial burden. The words hit me like a physical blow. Mom, you're just too expensive to keep. But what happened next would teach me that sometimes the people who save us aren't the ones we expect, and that family isn't always defined by blood. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I'm Margaret Thompson, but everyone calls me Maggie. 2 years ago, I thought I had my life figured out. I was living comfortably in my small house in Riverside, California, with my husband Robert of 43 years. We weren't wealthy, but we had enough. Social Security, a modest pension from Robert's 30 years at the postal service, and the house was nearly paid off. Life was simple, predictable, and safe. Then Robert had his first heart attack. The medical bills started immediately, but we weren't worried. We had insurance, savings, and Robert was strong. He'd bounce back like he always did. Except he didn't. 3 more heart attacks over 18 months, each one requiring longer hospital stays, more specialists, more treatments that our insurance deemed experimental or not medically necessary. I watched our savings disappear faster than morning fog. First the retirement account, then the emergency fund we'd built over decades of careful living. Robert needed care I couldn't provide alone, so we hired home health aides. When that became too expensive, I quit my part-time job at the local library to become his full-time caregiver. The lost income hit us hard, but what choice did I have? He was my husband, my partner, my best friend. When Robert finally passed away on a rainy Tuesday morning in March, I thought the worst was behind me. I was wrong. The medical bills kept coming even after his death. Apparently, the insurance company had decided to review and deny claims they'd previously approved. Suddenly, I owed $47,000 to various hospitals, specialists, and medical equipment companies. The house that had been our sanctuary for 25 years now felt like a prison with mortgage payments I could barely make. That's when David stepped in, or so I thought. My son had always been practical, maybe too practical. Even as a child, he'd approach problems with spreadsheets and cost-benefit analyses that amazed his teachers but sometimes worried me. When he graduated business school and landed a job at a consulting firm, I was proud but not surprised. David knew how to make things work, how to find solutions when others saw only problems. "Mom, we need to talk about your situation," he said during one of his monthly visits. He'd driven down from his house in Newport Beach, about an hour away, but he always seemed to be checking his watch, calculating how long he could stay before traffic got bad. "I've been looking at your finances, and this isn't sustainable." I knew he was right. The medical bills were drowning me, and my monthly Social Security check barely covered the basic utilities. I'd already started eating 1 meal a day to stretch my grocery budget. The house needed repairs I couldn't afford, and winter was coming with heating bills I dreaded. I'd applied for jobs, but apparently 68-year-old widows weren't exactly what employers were seeking, even for part-time positions. "What do you suggest?" I asked, though part of me already knew where this conversation was heading. David pulled out his tablet, swiping through what looked like financial projections and charts. "I've run the numbers several different ways, and the only viable solution is for you to sell the house. The equity will pay off your debts and give you some cushion for living expenses." "And then what? Where would I live?" He hesitated, and in that pause I saw something in my son that I'd never noticed before. A coldness that reminded me uncomfortably of his father's business associates, the men who could calculate human worth in dollars and cents. "There are some very nice senior living facilities in the area. I've researched the ones that accept Medicaid after you spend down your assets. Senior living facilities. The euphemism for warehouses, where old people went to wait for death." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. I'd visited friends in those places, seen the institutional furniture, smelled the mixture of disinfectant and despair that seemed to permeate every hallway. The good ones were expensive, and the ones that accepted Medicaid were understaffed, overcrowded, and depressing. David, I don't want to live in one of those places. This house is my home. It's where you grew up, where your father and I built our life together. There has to be another way. Mom, you're being emotional instead of practical. I know it's hard, but you have to face reality. The house is a financial drain you can't afford. The senior facility would take care of your meals, your medications, your social needs. You wouldn't have to worry about maintenance or property taxes, or any of the responsibilities that are obviously becoming too much for you. Obviously becoming too much for me. The phrase stung because there was some truth to it. I had let things slide since Robert's death. The kitchen faucet had been dripping for months, the front steps needed repair, and I'd stopped maintaining the garden that had once been my pride and joy. But it wasn't because I was incapable. It was because I was grieving, overwhelmed, and frankly, depressed. What if I moved in with you and Jennifer? I asked, though I already knew the answer from his expression. Mom, that's not realistic. Jennifer and I both work demanding jobs. We travel frequently for business. We're not equipped to provide the level of care and supervision you need. Supervision. As if I were a child who couldn't be trusted alone. I felt something inside me wither a little more. I don't need supervision, David. I need family. I need to know that the people I love aren't ready to dispose of me the moment I become inconvenient. His face flushed, but his voice remained steady. That's not fair, Mom. This isn't about convenience. It's about what's best for everyone involved. You can't afford to maintain this lifestyle, and frankly, neither can I. Jennifer and I have our own financial obligations. We're still paying off student loans, we have a mortgage, and we're trying to save for our future. We can't subsidize your living expenses indefinitely. I never asked you to subsidize anything. You didn't have to ask. Do you think, I don't know about the utility bills you've been struggling to pay, the property taxes that are 3 months overdue, the prescription medications you've been skipping because you can't afford them? Mom, you're drowning, and instead of accepting help, you're pulling everyone down with you. The words hit me like slaps. Some of what he said was true, which made it hurt more. I had been struggling, and I had been too proud to ask for help directly. But the way he framed it, as if my existence was a burden dragging down his success, felt like a betrayal deeper than I could have imagined. So what you're saying is that I'm too expensive to keep. David's jaw tightened. Don't be dramatic, Mom. I'm saying we need to find a solution that works for everyone, and that solution isn't you clinging to a house you can't afford, while expecting your children to bail you out every time you can't make ends meet. Children. Plural. As if he were speaking for his sister Sarah, who lived in Portland and called twice a year, or for his brother Mark, who'd been overseas with the military for the past decade. David was the only one close enough to deal with the inconvenience of an aging parent, and he was making it clear that inconvenience had reached its limit. I need some time to think about this, I said finally. You don't have time, Mom. The mortgage company sent another notice last week. If you don't catch up on the payments by the end of the month, they'll start foreclosure proceedings. I've already contacted a realtor about listing the house. We can have it on the market by Friday if you sign the papers today. He'd already contacted a realtor, already made plans for disposing of my life without consulting me. I felt the last vestiges of respect I'd held for my son crumble away, replaced by something harder and more painful. Get out, I said quietly. Mom, be reasonable. Get out of my house, David. If you've already decided my fate, you don't need my input. But, until I sign those papers, this is still my home, and I want you to leave. He gathered his papers and tablet with the efficiency of someone accustomed to difficult business meetings. I'll give you 24 hours to think about it, but then we need to move forward. The longer we wait, the worse your financial situation becomes. After he left, I sat in my living room surrounded by 43 years of memories, and tried to understand how my relationship with my son had deteriorated to the point where he could calculate my worth in spreadsheet cells. The grandfather clock that Robert had restored ticked steadily in the corner, marking time that suddenly felt precious and limited. I thought about the years I'd spent raising David, the sacrifices Robert and I had made to give him opportunities we'd never had. We'd worked extra jobs to pay for his college education, celebrated his successes, supported him through his divorce from Lisa, and welcomed Jennifer into our family despite her obvious discomfort with David's less affluent relatives. I'd babied David through every crisis, every career change, every relationship drama, never once suggesting that his problems were too expensive or inconvenient for me to handle. Now, when I needed support for the first time in my adult life, I was being told I was too much trouble to keep. The irony wasn't lost on me that David's first wife, Lisa, had been the one person in the family who'd seemed to understand what love without conditions looked like. During their marriage, she'd visited regularly, helped with house projects, and genuinely seemed to enjoy spending time with Robert and me. When David announced their divorce, citing, quote, incompatible life goals, I'd been heartbroken. Not just for their failed marriage, but because I was losing someone who'd felt like the daughter I'd never had. Lisa had disappeared from our lives after the divorce, which I understood. It would have been awkward for everyone if she'd continued family relationships that might interfere with David's new marriage to Jennifer. But I'd missed her warmth, her easy laughter, the way she'd helped me cook holiday dinners while David and Robert watched football, claiming kitchen duty was women's work. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in 3 years. I called Lisa. Her number was still in my phone, though I'd never had the courage to use it. When she answered, her voice was exactly as I remembered. Warm, slightly husky, with the hint of accent that betrayed her Mexican heritage. "Lisa, it's Maggie, David's mother." There was a pause, and I wondered if she would hang up. The divorce had been bitter, with accusations and lawyers and fights over property that had lasted months. David had painted Lisa as unreasonable and greedy, though at the time I'd wondered if he was telling the whole truth. "Maggie, oh my God, how are you? I heard about Robert, and I'm so sorry. I wanted to reach out, but I wasn't sure if that would be appropriate." Her genuine concern made my throat tight. "Thank you. It's been difficult." "I can't imagine. He was such a wonderful man. How are you holding up?" The simple question, asked with real caring, broke something loose inside me. I found myself telling her everything. Robert's illness, the medical bills, my financial situation, and David's ultimatum. I told her about the house I was about to lose, the senior facility he wanted to put me in, and the crushing realization that my son saw me as an expense rather than a person. Lisa listened without interrupting, occasionally making soft sounds of sympathy or outrage. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Maggie, I need to tell you something. When David and I divorced, one of our biggest fights was about you and Robert. He wanted to put money aside for his future kids' college funds, instead of helping with your medical expenses when Robert was sick. I thought family should come first, especially when you two had done so much for us. That fight showed me a side of David the first hadn't seen before, and it was one of the reasons I knew our marriage wouldn't work." The revelation stunned me. David had told us that Lisa was against helping with medical expenses, that she thought we should handle our own problems. Another lie in a pattern I was only beginning to recognize. "I had no idea," I said. "Of course you didn't. David's very good at controlling narratives. But Maggie, I want you to know something else. You don't have to go to a senior facility. You don't have to sell your house if you don't want to. There are other options." "Like what?" "Like coming to stay with me." The offer was so unexpected that I thought I'd misheard. "What?" "I have a 3-bedroom apartment in Santa Ana. It's not fancy, but it's comfortable, and I have plenty of space. Emma and Tyler are with me half the time, and with their dad the other half, so it's not like you'd be crowding us. And honestly, I could use help with the kids when they're here. I work full-time as a nurse practitioner, and childcare is expensive." I was speechless. This woman, who had every reason to want nothing to do with David's family, was offering me a home when my own son was ready to abandon me. "Lisa, I couldn't possibly—" "Yes, you could. Look, I know this sounds crazy, but hear me out. You need a place to live where you won't be isolated and forgotten. I need reliable help with my kids and someone to share expenses. Emma and Tyler adored you when they were little, and they've asked about you more than once since the divorce. It could work for everyone. But what would David say? What would people think? Since when do we care what David thinks about our choices? He made his position clear when he chose Jennifer over his family's well-being. And as for what people think, anyone who matters will understand that family is about love and support, not just shared DNA. I found myself crying, not from sadness but from relief. For the first time in months, someone was offering me an alternative to the grim future David had mapped out for me. Someone was suggesting that I might still have value beyond my ability to pay bills. I need to think about it, I said. Of course. But Maggie, don't let David pressure you into a decision you'll regret. You have options, and you have people who care about you. Don't forget that. After we hung up, I sat in my living room looking at the photographs covering every surface. Pictures of David at various ages, graduations, holidays, family vacations. In many of the later photos, Lisa was there too, smiling and genuine, looking like she belonged. I realized that in trying to erase her from his history, David had also erased some of the happiness from those memories. I thought about Emma and Tyler, Lisa's children who had briefly been my step-grandchildren. Emma would be 15 now, Tyler 13. During the marriage, they'd spent weekends at David and Lisa's house, and I'd loved having young energy around again. Emma had helped me plant tomatoes in my garden, and Tyler had been fascinated by Robert's woodworking projects in the garage. They were good kids, and Lisa was raising them to be thoughtful and kind. The more I considered Lisa's offer, the more sense it made. Not just financially, though that was certainly a factor, but emotionally, spiritually. The idea of living with people who actually wanted me around felt like a gift I hadn't dared hope for. The next morning, David called before I'd even finished my coffee. "Have you made a decision, Mom?" "I have," I said. "I'm not selling the house, and I'm not moving to a senior facility." "Mom, we discussed this. You don't have a choice." "Actually, I do. I'm moving in with Lisa." The silence on the other end of the phone stretched so long, I wondered if he'd hung up. "You're what?" "I'm moving in with your ex-wife," she offered, and I accepted. "That's insane. You can't be serious. Lisa's just trying to get back at me by using you. Or maybe she's offering because she cares about me as a person, not as a financial liability." "Mom, this is emotional blackmail. You're doing this to punish me." "David, everything isn't about you. I'm doing this because it's the best option for me. Lisa has a home where I'm welcome, children who remember me fondly, and a life where I can contribute something meaningful, instead of just existing until I die." "What about Jennifer? What about our family? What about them? Jennifer has made it clear she doesn't want me around, and you've made it clear I'm too expensive to keep. So I'm choosing to live with people who actually want me. This is ridiculous. You're making a mistake you'll regret." The only mistake I regret is not seeing sooner what kind of man I raised. I hung up before he could respond, and for the first time in months, I felt something that had been missing from my life. I felt hope. Over the next week, I had several long conversations with Lisa about logistics, expectations, and boundaries. She was remarkably thoughtful about potential problems and solutions. We discussed everything from household chores to privacy needs to what would happen if the arrangement didn't work out. Her maturity and consideration reminded me why I'd loved her during her marriage to David. "I want you to understand," she said during one of our talks, "that this isn't charity. I genuinely think this could be good for all of us." Emma's been struggling with some typical teenage stuff, and having another adult woman around who she respects could be really helpful. Tyler's at that age where he needs male role models, but he also needs to learn how to treat women with respect. You've always been good with kids, and I think your influence would be positive. And you're sure your ex-husband won't make trouble about this? You mean Emma and Tyler's father? Actually, Miguel thinks it's a great idea. He remembers you from family gatherings and knows you're good with the kids. As for David, his opinion doesn't factor into my decisions anymore. The logistics of moving were simpler than I'd expected. I decided to rent out my house rather than sell it, which would give me a small monthly income and preserve my option to return if things didn't work out with Lisa. A property management company could handle the details and deal with tenants, taking a percentage but saving me the hassle of being a landlord at my age. Most of my furniture wouldn't fit in Lisa's apartment, so I sold pieces I didn't need and put a few sentimental items in storage. The downsizing was actually liberating. After decades of accumulating possessions, I found peace in keeping only what I truly valued. The day before my move, David showed up at my door unannounced. He looked haggard, and I wondered if Jennifer had been giving him grief about the situation. "Mom, we need to talk." "I think we've said everything we need to say. This thing with Lisa is a mistake. You're going to be miserable living with someone else's kids trying to fit into a life that doesn't really include you. Come home with me. Jennifer and I have discussed it, and we think we can make room for you in our house." The offer was tempting for about 30 seconds. Then I realized what it really meant. David was worried about how this looked to other people. His mother choosing his ex-wife over him was a public relations nightmare he couldn't spin in his favor. What changed your mind? I realized I was being too focused on the financial aspects instead of considering your emotional needs. My emotional need not to be seen as too expensive to keep? He flinched. "I never said that." "Yes, David, you did. You said I was too expensive to keep, and you meant it. You calculated my worth like a business expense, and decided I wasn't worth the investment. I was trying to be practical. You were being cruel. And now you're trying to fix it because you're embarrassed that everyone knows your ex-wife has more compassion than you do. That's not fair." "Fair?" I laughed, and it wasn't a nice sound. Fair would have been my son supporting me through the worst period of my life, instead of treating me like a burden. Fair would have been some understanding that I was grieving and overwhelmed instead of criticism that I wasn't handling everything perfectly. Fair would have been love without conditions. I do love you, Mom. You love the idea of me, David. You love having a mother who doesn't cost you anything, or require you to sacrifice anything, or challenge you to be better than you are. But you don't love me enough to accept that I'm human and vulnerable and sometimes need help. So you're choosing Lisa's family over your own. I'm choosing people who want me over people who see me as an obligation." David left without another word, and I finished packing with a lighter heart than I'd felt in months. Tomorrow I would start a new chapter of my life, and for the first time since Robert's death, I was excited about what that chapter might hold. Moving day arrived with the kind of crisp October morning that made everything seem possible. I stood in my empty living room, holding the last box of my belongings, and felt a strange mixture of grief and anticipation. This house had been my sanctuary for over 2 decades, but it had also become a prison of memories and financial stress. Today I was choosing freedom over familiarity. Lisa arrived at 9 o'clock sharp, driving a rented pickup truck with Emma and Tyler in the cab. The kids had grown so much since I'd last seen them that I barely recognized them. Emma, now 15, had inherited her mother's warm brown eyes and her father's height. Tyler, 13, was all arms and legs, caught in that awkward phase between childhood and adolescence. Both of them hugged me with genuine enthusiasm, and I felt some of the tension I'd been carrying begin to ease. "Abuela Maggie," Emma exclaimed, using the Spanish term of endearment she'd called me during her parents' marriage. "I can't believe you're really coming to live with us. Are you excited?" Tyler asked, bouncing on his toes with energy that reminded me of David at that age, before life had taught him to calculate everything in terms of cost and benefit. "I'm nervous," I admitted, "but the good kind of nervous, like when you're about to go on an adventure." Lisa appeared at my elbow, looking more beautiful than I remembered. Nursing had kept her physically strong, and there was a confidence in her bearing that spoke of someone who'd learned to navigate life's challenges independently. She wore jeans and a UCLA sweatshirt, her dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, and she looked like someone who could handle whatever came her way. "Ready for this?" she asked, squeezing my shoulder. "Ready as I'll ever be." Loading the truck took less time than I'd expected, mainly because I'd already pared down my possessions to the essentials. The kids worked with surprising efficiency, treating the move like a game rather than the life-altering transition it represented for me. Emma carefully wrapped my china in newspaper while Tyler hauled boxes with teenage enthusiasm that made me worry about my more fragile items. "Don't worry about him," Lisa said, noticing my concern. "He's stronger than he looks, and he's actually very careful with things that matter to people." As we drove through the familiar streets of Riverside toward Santa Ana, I found myself cataloging details I'd never paid attention to before. The color of the autumn leaves, the way the morning light hit the mountains in the distance, the sound of the kids' laughter as they argued good-naturedly about music choices. These were the moments that made up a life, I realized, and I'd been so focused on grief and worry that I'd stopped noticing them. Lisa's apartment complex was modest but well-maintained, with a small courtyard and a pool that looked inviting despite the season. Her unit was on the second floor, with a view of the San Gabriel Mountains that took my breath away. "I know it's not as big as your house," Lisa said as she unlocked the door, "but I hope you'll be comfortable here." The apartment was warm and welcoming in a way that had nothing to do with size or expensive furnishings. The living room was painted a soft yellow that made the space feel sunny, even on cloudy days. Family photos covered one wall, including several that featured me from holidays during David's marriage. I was touched that she'd kept them displayed. "This is your room," Emma said, leading me down a short hallway to a bedroom that was clearly meant for guests but felt instantly homey. The walls were painted a calming sage green, and the bed was covered with a quilt that looked handmade. A small desk sat under the window, and bookshelves lined one wall. "I picked out the colors," Tyler announced proudly. "Mom said you used to be a librarian, so I thought you'd like having lots of bookshelves." "I was never actually a librarian," I said, touched by his thoughtfulness. "I just worked part-time at the library after after Robert retired. But I do love books, and this is perfect." Lisa appeared in the doorway, carrying a vase of fresh flowers. "I know it's an adjustment, living with other people after being on your own. We've talked about house rules and expectations, but I want you to know that this is your home now, not just a place you're staying. You don't have to ask permission to use the kitchen or the living room, and you don't have to hide in your room if you need space." The casual way she addressed my concerns told me she'd put real thought into how to make this work. I'd been worried about feeling like an intruder, but she was making it clear that I was a resident, not a guest. "What about household responsibilities?" I asked. "I want to contribute, not just be another burden." "You're not a burden," Emma said firmly, "and we already talked about this. You're going to help with cooking because you're an amazing cook, and you're going to help me with my college applications because you're smart, and you know about that stuff. Plus," Tyler added, "you're going to teach me how to play chess because Mom said you used to beat Dad all the time, and I want to learn how to be that good." Their easy acceptance of my presence was both heartwarming and slightly overwhelming. I'd been so focused on the logistics of moving that I hadn't fully processed the emotional reality of joining an established family unit. These children were welcoming me not as an elderly relative to be tolerated, but as someone they genuinely wanted around. "And I was hoping," Lisa said, "that you might be willing to help with some of the household management stuff." I work long shifts at the hospital, and keeping track of schedules and appointments and all the details of running a household with teenagers is challenging. If you're comfortable with it, your organizational skills would be a huge help. I felt a flutter of something I hadn't experienced in months: usefulness. David had made me feel like a burden, a problem to be solved, but Lisa was offering me the chance to be valuable again, to contribute something meaningful to a family that wanted my help. "I'd be happy to help with all of that," I said. "I spent years managing a household and coordinating schedules. It would actually be nice to have something productive to do." The first week was an adjustment period that tested everyone's patience and adaptability. I'd been living alone for 2 years, and suddenly I was sharing space with a busy nurse practitioner and 2 active teenagers. The apartment that had seemed spacious during my visit now felt more intimate, as I learned the rhythms of my new household. Emma was a morning person like me, and we quickly established a routine of having coffee together before she left for school. She was a junior in high school, stressed about college applications and future plans. Her grades were excellent, but she was worried about affording college tuition. Mom works so hard, she confided during one of our morning conversations. She never complains, but I know money is tight. I've been thinking about going to community college first to save money, but I got accepted to UC Santa Barbara for early admission, and it's my dream school. Have you talked to your mother about this? I don't want to stress her out more than she already is. She's been working extra shifts to save up for my college expenses, and I see how tired she gets. I recognized the same financial anxiety that had plagued my own family, but I also saw an opportunity to help in a way that went beyond household management. Emma, what if we looked at scholarship opportunities together? I helped students with college applications for years at the library, and I know there are resources we could explore. Her face lit up. Really? You'd help me with that? I'd love to. In fact, why don't we set aside some time this weekend to research options? There are scholarships for everything from academic achievement to community service to essay contests. We just need to find the ones that match your strengths. Tyler presented a different kind of challenge. He was at that age where he needed constant activity and stimulation, but he was also surprisingly thoughtful and curious. He'd gotten into the habit of doing his homework at the kitchen table while Lisa cooked dinner, and he often asked questions that showed he was paying attention to adult conversations even when he seemed distracted. "Abuela Maggie," he said one evening while I was helping him with algebra, "why did Uncle David not want you to live with him?" The question caught me off guard. I'd been careful not to speak negatively about David in front of the kids, but Tyler was perceptive enough to pick up on the tension. "It's complicated, sweetheart. Sometimes adults make decisions that seem right to them but hurt other people's feelings. But families are supposed to take care of each other, right? That's what Mom always tells us." "That's right. Families should take care of each other." So Uncle David wasn't being a good family member? I considered my words carefully. Uncle David was trying to solve a problem, but he forgot that love is more important than money. Sometimes when people are worried about finances, they make decisions that aren't very kind. Tyler nodded solemnly. "I'm glad you came to live with us instead. It's more fun having you here." His innocent acceptance of the situation made me realize how much I'd been overthinking the dynamics of my new living arrangement. To Tyler and Emma, I wasn't a displaced elderly woman who'd been rejected by her son. I was simply Abuela Maggie, who helped with homework and made amazing breakfast burritos and told stories about the old days. Lisa, meanwhile, was proving to be an ideal housemate. She was considerate about shared spaces, communicative about schedules and needs, and genuinely interested in my adjustment to our new arrangement. She worked 12-hour shifts at the hospital, often coming home exhausted, but she always made time to check in with me about how my day had gone. "I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop," she confessed one evening after the kids had gone to bed. "This feels almost too good to be true. You're amazing with Emma and Tyler. You've transformed our household organization, and you seem happy. I keep thinking I must be missing something." "What do you mean?" "I mean, David painted such a different picture of your needs and your personality. He made it sound like you were becoming demanding and difficult, that you had unrealistic expectations about family support. But that's not who you are at all." This was the first time she'd directly referenced David's version of events, and I found myself curious about what exactly he'd told her. "What did he say about me?" Lisa hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the topic. "He said you were becoming manipulative about money, that you were making him feel guilty for not bailing you out of your financial problems. He said you were refusing to accept help because you wanted to maintain control over your living situation, even when that wasn't realistic." The description was so far from my actual behavior that I almost laughed. "Did that sound like me to you?" "Not at all, which is why I suspected he wasn't telling the whole truth. David has always been good at reframing situations to make himself look reasonable, and other people look difficult. It's one of the things that eventually made our marriage impossible." "What do you mean?" "He did it to me constantly. If I disagreed with him about something, he'd tell his friends and family that I was being emotional or unreasonable. If I wanted to spend money on something he didn't prioritize, he'd paint me as financially irresponsible. He had this way of making me doubt my own perceptions and judgment." I felt a chill of recognition. David had been doing the same thing to me, undermining my credibility by suggesting I was confused, demanding, or unrealistic. It was a pattern of manipulation I was only beginning to understand. "I wish I'd recognized what he was doing when you were married," I said. "I might have been able to help you see it more clearly." "You were always kind to me, Maggie. Even when David was painting me as the villain during our divorce, you never treated me differently. That meant more to me than you probably realized." As the weeks passed, I found myself settling into a routine that felt both familiar and refreshing. I woke early to have coffee with Emma, spent my mornings organizing household tasks and researching scholarship opportunities, and devoted my afternoons to helping Tyler with homework or driving him to soccer practice. Evenings were for family dinners and conversation, the kind of relaxed family time I'd missed since Robert's death. The financial arrangement was working well for everyone. My Social Security check and the small rental income from my house covered my share of expenses, and I was able to contribute to household costs without feeling like a burden. More importantly, I was able to help Lisa in ways that saved her money and stress. "I can't believe how much easier my life has become," she told me one evening as we cleaned up after dinner. "Having someone here to manage the household schedule and help with the kids is like having a personal assistant, but better because you actually care about our well-being." "I should be thanking you," I replied. "I feel useful again. I feel like I matter." "You do matter. You matter to all of us." It was around this time that David began making his presence known again. He'd been silent for the first month after my move, but apparently his curiosity or guilt had gotten the better of him. He started with text messages, asking how I was adjusting and whether I needed anything. I responded politely but briefly, not wanting to encourage lengthy conversations. Then he began calling, usually in the evening when he knew I'd be available. The conversations were strained and awkward, with David clearly fishing for information about my living situation, while trying to maintain the fiction that he was simply concerned about my well-being. "How are you getting along with Lisa?" he asked during one of these calls. "Very well. She's been wonderful." "And the kids? I imagine they're pretty demanding." "They're great kids. I enjoy spending time with them." "Mom, you don't have to pretend everything is perfect just to prove a point. If you're having problems, you can talk to me." "I'm not having problems, David. I'm happy." "Are you sure? Because this whole arrangement seems pretty unstable. What happens if Lisa meets someone and wants to get remarried? What happens if you get sick and need more care than she can provide? What happens if the kids get tired of having an old woman around?" His questions were clearly designed to plant seeds of doubt, to make me worry about scenarios that might or might not come to pass. It was the same manipulative technique Lisa had described, the subtle undermining of confidence and judgment. "David, I'm not going to live my life afraid of things that might happen. I'm going to focus on the good things that are happening right now. I'm just trying to look out for you, Mom. I want to make sure you have realistic expectations. My expectations are that people who care about me will treat me with respect and kindness." So far, that's exactly what I'm getting. The conversations always ended with David suggesting that I should keep my options open, that I shouldn't burn bridges, that I should remember that blood family was ultimately more reliable than chosen family. I began to dread his calls, and I noticed that they always left me feeling unsettled and defensive. Lisa noticed my mood after one of these conversations and asked me about it. "He's trying to make me doubt this decision," I told her. "He keeps asking questions designed to make me worry about the future." That's classic David behavior. He can't stand the idea that you're happy without him, so he's trying to sabotage your confidence. But what if he's right? What if I'm being naive about this arrangement? "Maggie, look at me." Lisa's voice was firm but gentle. "You've been here for 6 weeks. In that time, you've helped Emma raise her GPA by organizing her study schedule and helping her with scholarship applications. You've helped Tyler improve his algebra grade from a C to a B+. You've managed our household so efficiently that I've been able to pick up extra shifts at work without feeling like I'm neglecting my kids. You've brought stability and wisdom to our family that we didn't even know we were missing. But what about the future? What if things change?" "Things always change, Maggie. But that doesn't mean we should live in fear of change or avoid good things, because they might not last forever. Right now, this arrangement is working beautifully for everyone involved. That's what matters." Her words made sense, but David's persistent questioning had awakened anxieties I thought I'd resolved. I found myself paying closer attention to small tensions, wondering if the kids were getting tired of my presence, questioning whether I was contributing enough to justify my place in their household. It was Emma who helped me put things in perspective. She'd been working on her college applications with my help, and we'd had remarkable success finding scholarship opportunities that matched her profile. She'd already received 2 small awards, and we had applications pending for several larger scholarships. "Abuela Maggie," she said one evening as we worked on her personal statement for a merit scholarship, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why do you sometimes seem worried about whether we want you here? Like sometimes you ask if you're being too much trouble or if we need more space, and I don't understand why you think that." Her question caught me off guard. I hadn't realized my insecurities were showing. "I suppose I worry that I'm imposing on your family. This is your home, and I'm the newcomer. But you're not imposing. You're helping. Like, my grades are better because you help me stay organized. Tyler's happier because someone's actually available to help him with homework instead of mom trying to do it after working a 12-hour shift. And mom is less stressed because you handle all the household stuff she used to worry about. But what about your freedom? Don't you feel like you have to be more careful about what you say or do because there's an adult around?" Emma laughed. "Abuela Maggie, you're not like other adults. You don't judge us or lecture us all the time. You actually listen to what we're saying, and you give advice that makes sense. Plus, you make the best food ever, and you know how to fix things when they break. But what if someday you want more privacy, or you get tired of sharing your space? Then we'll talk about it like a family. But why are you worried about someday? Are you not happy here?" "I'm very happy here. Happier than I've been in years." "Then stop worrying about problems that don't exist. Uncle David has been calling you, hasn't he?" Her perceptiveness surprised me. "How did you know?" "Because you only get that worried look after he calls. And because he's been asking Tyler and me questions about how you're doing when he sees us." "He's been talking to you?" "He ran into us at the mall last weekend. He asked a bunch of questions about whether you were causing problems, whether mom was getting tired of having you around, whether you were being demanding about money or anything like that." I felt a surge of anger that David was involving the children in his campaign to undermine my confidence. "What did you tell him?" I told him he was being ridiculous. I said you were the best thing that had happened to our family in years, and if he was too stupid to appreciate you, that was his loss. "Emma, he's still your uncle. He's my uncle by marriage, and that marriage is over. You're my family because you choose to be, and we choose to have you. That's way more important than some stupid blood relationship." Her fierce loyalty touched me deeply, but it also made me realize how much I'd been allowing David's manipulation to affect my sense of security. I was letting his voice in my head override the evidence of my own experience. That night, I made a decision. I was going to stop taking David's calls. I was going to trust my own judgment about my living situation. And I was going to focus on building the life I wanted instead of defending it against someone who didn't have my best interests at heart. The next morning, I woke up feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Emma was already at the kitchen table, working on her scholarship essays while eating the breakfast I'd prepared. Tyler was getting ready for school, and Lisa was preparing for another long shift at the hospital. "Good morning, family," I said, and for the first time, the word felt completely natural. "Good morning, Abuela Maggie," Emma replied without looking up from her laptop. "Can you read over this essay when you have a minute? I think it's good, but I want to make sure it sounds right." "Of course." "And Tyler, don't forget you have soccer practice after school. I'll pick you up at 5:30. "Thanks, Abuela Maggie. Are you still going to help me with my history project this weekend?" "Absolutely. We'll make it the best project your teacher has ever seen." Lisa appeared in the kitchen, looking professional in her scrubs and white coat. "You know what I love about mornings now?" she said, grabbing a travel mug of coffee. "I don't have to worry about whether the kids will get a good breakfast or whether someone will be here when they get home from school. I can focus on my patients instead of wondering if my family is okay. That's what families do, I said. We take care of each other. Exactly. And Maggie, I know David has been trying to plant doubts in your mind, but I want you to know something. This arrangement isn't charity or convenience. You're not here because we feel sorry for you. You're here because you make our lives better, and we hope we make yours better too. You do. You really do. As I watched my chosen family start their day, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. I had a home where I was valued, responsibilities that gave me purpose, and people who genuinely cared about my well-being. David's rejection, which had seemed like the end of my world, had actually been the beginning of a new chapter that was richer and more fulfilling than anything I could have imagined. The morning sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, illuminating the family photos on the refrigerator. Many of them now included me, captured during our first weeks together. In those photos, I looked happy and relaxed in a way I hadn't seen in my own face for years. I was exactly where I belonged, and no amount of manipulation or guilt from David could change that fact. I had found my tribe, and they had found me. That was worth more than any blood relationship that came with conditions and calculations. The phone rang, and I saw David's number on the caller ID. For the first time in weeks, I let it go to voicemail. I had better things to do than defend my happiness to someone who couldn't understand it. I had a family to take care of, and they had me to take care of them. That was all that mattered. The confrontation I'd been dreading finally came on a cold December morning when I was least prepared for it. I was in the kitchen making tamales with Emma for her school's multicultural potluck when the doorbell rang insistently. The sound had an urgency that made my stomach clench with unease. "I'll get it," Emma called, wiping masa from her hands. She returned moments later with a puzzled expression. "Abuela Maggie, Uncle David is here. He says he needs to talk to you." Through the kitchen window, I could see David's BMW parked at an angle that suggested he'd arrived in a hurry. His posture as he stood in the doorway was rigid with barely controlled anger, and I realized this wasn't going to be one of his manipulative phone calls designed to plant seeds of doubt. This was something else entirely. "Emma, why don't you go to your room for a few minutes while I talk to your uncle?" "Are you sure? You look worried." "I'm fine, sweetheart. This is just adult business." David stepped into the living room without waiting for an invitation, his eyes scanning the space with the calculating assessment I'd come to recognize and dread. He was dressed in his expensive business suit, but his usually perfect appearance showed signs of stress. His hair was disheveled, and there were dark circles under his eyes that suggested he hadn't been sleeping well. "We need to talk, Mom. Now." "Keep your voice down. This is Lisa's home, and I won't have you disrupting her household." "Her household?" David's laugh was bitter and sharp. "Mom, you're living in a fantasy if you think this arrangement is going to last. I've been patient, hoping you'd come to your senses, but it's time someone told you the truth about what's really happening here." "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact that you're being used. Lisa isn't helping you out of the goodness of her heart. She's manipulating you just like she manipulated me during our marriage." The accusation hit me like a slap, not because I believed it, but because I could see David actually believed what he was saying. In his mind, he'd constructed a narrative that absolved him of guilt while painting Lisa as the villain. "That's ridiculous, David. Lisa has been nothing but kind and generous." "Has she? Or has she convinced you to pay for things you shouldn't have to pay for? Has she made you feel guilty about not contributing enough? Has she started making demands about your time and energy? I contribute to household expenses because I'm an adult who pays her own way. I help with the children because I care about them. Nobody has made demands of me." "Really?" "Because I've heard differently." Something cold settled in my chest. "What do you mean, you've heard differently?" David pulled out his phone and scrolled through what appeared to be a series of text messages. "Jennifer has a friend who works at Emma's school. She's been keeping track of how often you're there, how much you're doing for Emma's college applications, how much money you're spending on school-related expenses." The revelation that David and Jennifer had been spying on me through their social connections was shocking enough, But the implications were worse. They weren't just monitoring my activities. They were looking for evidence to support their theory that I was being exploited. I help Emma with her college applications because I want to help her succeed. I volunteer at school events because I enjoy being involved in her education. These are choices I make freely. Mom, you're 78 years old. You shouldn't be running around playing chauffeur and personal assistant to someone else's children. I'm 68, David, and I'm perfectly capable of deciding how to spend my time and energy. Are you? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like Lisa has convinced you to be her live-in nanny and housekeeper while she reaps all the benefits. The characterization of my role in Lisa's household was so far from reality that I almost laughed. But David's obvious conviction that he was rescuing me from exploitation revealed how little he understood about what family relationships were supposed to look like. David, I think you should leave now. I'm not leaving until you understand what's happening here. Lisa is taking advantage of your vulnerability and your guilt about our relationship. She's using your need to feel wanted to get free childcare and household management. That's enough. No, it's not enough. Mom, she's poisoned you against your own family. She's convinced you that we don't care about you, when the truth is that we're the only ones who have your real interests at heart. My real interests? Like when you told me I was too expensive to keep? David's face flushed, but he didn't back down. I was trying to help you face reality about your financial situation. I was trying to find solutions that would ensure your long-term security instead of letting you cling to unrealistic expectations. And now? What's your solution now? Now I think you should come home with me. Jennifer and I have talked extensively about this, and we've decided we can make room for you in our lives. We'll convert the guest room into a permanent space for you, and we'll help you get back on your feet financially. The offer should have been everything I'd wanted to hear 3 months ago, but now it felt hollow and manipulative. David wasn't offering because he'd realized his mistake, or because he genuinely wanted me in his life. He was offering because he couldn't tolerate the public embarrassment of his ex-wife being more generous than he was. What changed your mind? I realized I was being too focused on practical considerations instead of emotional ones. Family should come first, and I should have recognized that from the beginning. And Jennifer? She's suddenly enthusiastic about having me live with you? David hesitated, and in that pause, I saw the truth. Jennifer wasn't enthusiastic about anything. This was David's attempt to regain control of a situation that had spun beyond his management. Jennifer understands that family obligations are important. She's willing to make adjustments to accommodate your needs. How generous of her to be willing to tolerate my presence in exchange for you feeling better about yourself. That's not fair, Mom. We're offering you a real home with your real family, instead of this temporary arrangement with people who don't have any actual obligation to you. Temporary? David, I've been living here for 3 months, and it's the happiest I've been since your father died. Why would you assume it's temporary? Because it is temporary. Mom, think about this logically. What happens when Lisa starts dating again? What happens when she meets someone and wants to get married? Do you really think her new husband is going to want his wife's ex-mother-in-law living in their home? What happens when you and Jennifer decide you want to start a family? What happens when you get transferred for work or decide you want a bigger house? Would your generous offer still stand then? David's expression suggested he hadn't considered these scenarios, which confirmed my suspicion that his offer was more about immediate damage control than long-term planning. That's different, we're family. No, David. Family is about love and commitment and mutual support. It's not about blood relationships or legal obligations. Lisa and Emma and Tyler treat me like family because they choose to, not because they have to. Mom, you're making a mistake that you're going to regret. When this arrangement falls apart, and it will fall apart, don't expect me to clean up the mess. I wouldn't dream of expecting anything from you, David. You've made your priorities very clear. The sound of the front door opening interrupted our confrontation. Lisa walked in carrying grocery bags, still wearing her scrubs from her morning shift at the hospital. She took in the scene immediately, her eyes moving from David's aggressive posture to my defensive stance. David, I wasn't expecting to see you here. Lisa, I was just explaining to Mom why this living arrangement isn't sustainable. Really? Because from my perspective, it's working beautifully for everyone involved. Is it? Or are you just enjoying having free childcare and housekeeping services? Lisa set down her grocery bags with deliberate calm, but I could see the anger building in her eyes. I think you should be very careful about what you say next, David. I'm saying that my mother is being taken advantage of by someone who has a history of manipulating people to get what she wants. The way I manipulated you during our marriage? Is that what you're referring to? Among other things, yes. Lisa's laugh was sharp and humorless. David, you have an amazing ability to rewrite history to make yourself the victim. But since you brought it up, let's talk about manipulation. Let's talk about how you convinced me that I was unreasonable for wanting to help your parents with medical expenses. Let's talk about how you made me feel guilty for questioning your financial priorities when you were spending money on golf club memberships while your father was dying. That's not what happened. That's exactly what happened. And now you're doing the same thing to your mother that you did to me. You're trying to make her doubt her own judgment and her own happiness because it doesn't fit with your version of how things should be. I'm trying to protect her from being exploited. You're trying to protect your own ego from the embarrassment of having your ex-wife be a better family member than you are. The accusation hung in the air between them, and I could see David struggling to find a response that didn't confirm Lisa's assessment. His face was flushed with anger and humiliation, and I recognized the expression from his childhood when he'd been caught in lies or bad behavior. "Mom," he said, turning back to me, "I want you to think very carefully about what you're choosing here. Are you really going to throw away your relationship with your son for someone who's using you? David, I'm not throwing anything away. You're the one who told me I was too expensive to keep. You're the one who wanted to put me in a nursing home rather than make room for me in your life. I didn't end our relationship. You did. I was trying to find practical solutions to difficult problems. You were trying to get rid of an inconvenience. There's a difference. Fine. But when this arrangement falls apart, when Lisa gets tired of supporting you or finds someone who doesn't want you around, don't come crying to me for help." "I won't," I said quietly. "I'll never ask you for help again." David stared at me for a long moment, and I could see him realizing that his threats and ultimatums no longer had any power over me. I wasn't afraid of being alone anymore because I wasn't alone. I had people who genuinely cared about me, and that knowledge had freed me from the fear that had made me vulnerable to his manipulation. "You're making a mistake, Mom. A big one." "Maybe, but it's my mistake to make." After David left, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows, Lisa and I stood in the living room processing what had just happened. I felt drained and shaky, but also oddly relieved. The confrontation I'd been dreading was over, and I'd survived it without backing down or compromising my position. "Are you okay?" Lisa asked gently. "I think so. That was harder than I expected. He was trying to manipulate you into feeling guilty about being happy. It's classic David behavior." "I know, but hearing him say those things about you, about our arrangement, it made me angry in a way I haven't felt in years. Because you know they're not true. Because I know they're not true. And because I can see how he's trying to rewrite history to make himself look better." Emma appeared in the kitchen doorway, her face pale with concern. "Is everything okay?" We could hear shouting. "Everything's fine, sweetheart. Your Uncle David was just upset about some family issues." "Is he mad that you're living with us?" Lisa and I exchanged glances, and I realized we'd never explicitly discussed with the children how David felt about my living situation. We'd tried to shield them from the family drama, but they were smart enough to pick up on the tension. "He thinks I should be living with him instead," I said carefully. "But you don't want to live with him, do you?" "No, Emma. I want to live here with you and Tyler and your mom." "Good, because we want you here too. And besides, Uncle David's kind of a jerk." "Emma," Lisa said warningly, though I could see she was trying not to smile. "What? He is. Remember when he told Tyler that soccer was a waste of time, and he should focus on activities that would look better on college applications?" Tyler was only 11 years old. The memory she referenced was one I'd forgotten, but it was typical of David's approach to relationships. He had strong opinions about what other people should do with their lives, And he wasn't shy about sharing those opinions even when they weren't welcome. Uncle David has different ideas about what's important in life, I said diplomatically. Yeah, and his ideas are stupid. Mom, can we finish making the tamales now? I want to make sure they're perfect for the potluck tomorrow. As we returned to the kitchen and our interrupted cooking project, I reflected on the contrast between the two conversations I'd just had. David's visit had been all about control, manipulation, and what he thought was best for me regardless of what I wanted. Emma's response had been about acceptance, loyalty, and what would make me happy. You know, I said as I helped Emma shape the masa, I've learned something important in the past few months. What's that? Family isn't about who gave birth to you or who shares your DNA. Family is about who shows up for you when you need them, who celebrates your successes, and who loves you even when you're not perfect. Is that why you chose us instead of Uncle David? I chose you because you chose me first. When I needed a home, your mom offered me one. When I needed to feel useful, you and Tyler gave me ways to help. When I needed to feel loved, all of you showed me what real love looks like. Without expecting anything back? Without keeping score. That's the difference between real love and conditional love. Real love doesn't come with a bill. Tyler wandered into the kitchen, drawn by the smell of cooking and the sound of our conversation. Are we talking about Uncle David being weird again? We're talking about family, Emma said. About how some people are family because they have to be, and other people are family because they want to be. I like the want to be kind better, Tyler said, stealing a small piece of masa. Can I help with the tamales? Of course. Here, let me show you how to spread the masa evenly. As I guided Tyler's hands through the process of making tamales, I thought about the life I was building in this kitchen with these children. It wasn't the life I'd planned when Robert and I mapped out our retirement years, but it was rich and meaningful in ways I couldn't have anticipated. Lisa appeared in the kitchen doorway, having changed out of her scrubs into jeans and a sweater. How's the tamale production going? Great, Tyler announced. Abuela Maggie is teaching me the secret technique. There's no secret technique, I laughed. It's just practice and patience. And love, Emma added. Abuela Maggie says you can taste the difference when food is made with love. She's right about that, Lisa said, settling into a chair at the kitchen table. Maggie, I want you to know that what David said today doesn't change anything for me. This arrangement works because we all contribute something valuable, and we all benefit from what the others contribute. It's not charity or exploitation. It's family. I know that, but thank you for saying it anyway. I also want you to know that if David continues to harass you or make you feel uncomfortable about living here, I'll have a conversation with him that makes today's discussion look like a friendly chat. The protective tone in her voice reminded me of the way she'd defended her children from their father's criticism during her marriage to David. Lisa was fierce when it came to protecting the people she loved, and apparently, I was now included in that category. I don't think he'll be back anytime soon. I made it pretty clear that his threats and ultimatums don't work on me anymore. Good. Because you deserve to be happy, Maggie. You deserve to live somewhere you're valued and appreciated, not somewhere you're tolerated as a burden. That evening, after the children had gone to bed, Lisa and I sat in the living room with cups of tea, processing the day's events more thoroughly. I'd been thinking about David's accusations and wondering if there was any truth to his claim that I was being taken advantage of. Lisa, can I ask you something honestly? Of course. Do you ever feel like this arrangement is unfair to you? Like you're getting the short end of the deal? Maggie, are you serious? You want to know if I think it's unfair that I have reliable help with my children? Someone who manages my household schedule? Someone who makes sure Emma stays on track with her college applications? Someone who helps Tyler with his homework every night? And someone who fills my house with the kind of warmth and wisdom that only comes from experience? When you put it like that, it sounds like I'm contributing, but David made it sound like you were just being charitable. David sees the world in terms of financial transactions. He can't understand relationships that aren't based on keeping score or maintaining control. What we have here is mutual support. We all give, and we all receive. That's how healthy families work. But what if things change? What if you meet someone and want to get married again? What if your needs change and this arrangement doesn't work anymore? Then we'll figure it out together, like families do. Maggie, I can't promise you that nothing will ever change, because life always changes. But I can promise you that any changes we make will be made with everyone's best interests in mind, not just mine or David's or anyone else's. That's more security than David ever offered me. Because David's version of security was based on you conforming to his expectations and not causing problems for him. Real security comes from knowing that the people who love you will work with you to solve problems, not abandon you when problems arise. Later that night, as I lay in my bed listening to the familiar sounds of the household settling down for sleep, I reflected on the journey that had brought me to this moment. 6 months ago, I'd been a widowed woman drowning in medical debt and facing the prospect of spending my final years in institutional care. Tonight, I was a valued member of a loving family, with responsibilities that gave my life meaning and relationships that brought me joy. David's visit had been intended to shake my confidence and make me doubt my choices. Instead, it had clarified for me just how much my life had improved since I'd moved in with Lisa. I was healthier, happier, and more engaged with life than I'd been in years. I had goals and projects and people who depended on me in positive ways. Emma's scholarship applications were progressing beautifully, and she'd already been accepted to 3 universities with partial financial aid. Tyler's grades had improved significantly since I'd started helping him with homework, and his confidence in school was growing. Lisa was less stressed and more present with her children because she didn't have to worry about household management and childcare logistics. Most importantly, I felt valued and loved in a way that wasn't conditional on my ability to pay my own way or avoid being inconvenient. This family had chosen me not because they had to, but because they wanted to. That choice had given me back my sense of worth and purpose. David could keep his spreadsheets and his calculations about what was practical or sustainable. I had something much more valuable than financial security. I had emotional security. I had people who would stand by me not because we shared DNA, but because we shared love. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities. Emma had a scholarship interview next week that we needed to prepare for. Tyler had a science project due that would require creative thinking and careful execution. Lisa was working on getting promoted to a supervisory position that would mean better hours and more flexibility. These were the problems and possibilities of a real life, a life lived in connection with other people who mattered to me and to whom I mattered. It was messy and complicated and sometimes difficult, but it was also rich and meaningful and full of love. David could keep his version of family with its conditions and calculations and careful management of obligations. I had found something better. I had found home. Spring arrived early that year, bringing with it changes I never could have anticipated. Emma had been accepted to UC Santa Barbara with a substantial merit scholarship, thanks to our months of careful application work. Tyler was thriving in school, his confidence blooming under the steady encouragement he received at home. Lisa had been promoted to nurse supervisor, giving her better hours and a significant salary increase. Everything seemed to be falling into place perfectly until the phone call that would test everything we'd built together. I was in the garden, planting tomatoes with Tyler, when Lisa called me inside. Her expression was serious, and she held her phone with the careful grip of someone who'd just received news that would change everything. "That was my ex-husband, Miguel," she said, settling onto the couch. "He's been offered a position with his company in Phoenix, and he wants to take Emma and Tyler with him." The words hit me like a physical blow. I'd grown so comfortable in our life together that I'd forgotten how quickly circumstances could shift. Miguel had been a background presence in our lives, picking up the children every other weekend and maintaining cordial relationships with all of us. The idea that he might want to move away with Emma and Tyler had never occurred to me. "What does that mean exactly?" I asked, though I was afraid I already knew. "Legally, he has the right to relocate with the children as long as he can demonstrate it's in their best interests. Better job, better schools, better opportunities. The court will likely approve it unless I can prove it would be harmful to them." "And would it be harmful?" Lisa was quiet for a long moment, staring out the window where Tyler was still working in the garden, completely unaware that his life might be about to change dramatically. "I don't know. Miguel is a good father, and Phoenix does have excellent schools. The position he's been offered would more than double his salary, which means he could provide financial opportunities for the kids that I can't match on a nurse's salary. But they're happy here. They're thriving in their current schools, they have friends, they have stability. I know. But the court doesn't always weigh emotional stability as heavily as financial opportunity. And Maggie, there's something else. If Miguel takes the kids to Phoenix, I'd probably have to move there too. I couldn't bear to be that far away from them, and weekend visits twice a month wouldn't be enough. The implication of what she was saying settled over me slowly. If Lisa moved to Phoenix, I would be alone again. Not just without my chosen family, but without any real options for rebuilding the life I'd found here. I was too old to start over somewhere new, and going back to David wasn't a possibility I could even consider. When would this happen? He wants to make the move this summer, before the new school year starts. That gives us about 4 months to figure out what we're going to do. That evening, we sat the children down to explain the situation. Emma's reaction was immediate and fierce. I'm not going to Phoenix. I'm 18 in 6 months, and I'll be leaving for college anyway. Why should I have to move somewhere for half a year and leave all my friends behind? Because your father has rights too, Lisa said gently, and because he loves you and wants to be part of your life. He can be part of my life here. He's been part of my life here for 3 years without any problems. Tyler's response was more complicated. At 13, he was old enough to understand the implications, but young enough to be excited about the adventure of living somewhere new. Would I get to see Abuela Maggie if we moved? He asked. Not as often as you do now, Lisa answered honestly. Then I don't want to go either. Watching these children choose me over new opportunities and financial advantages was both heartwarming and heartbreaking. They were willing to sacrifice potential benefits to maintain our family unit, but I couldn't let them make that choice without considering all the implications. Listen to me, both of you, I said. Family isn't about staying in the same place forever. It's about loving each other no matter where life takes us. If your father can provide better opportunities for you in Phoenix, then maybe that's what's best for your futures. But what about you? Emma asked. What would happen to you if we left? It was the question I'd been trying not to think about. I'd figure something out. I always do. That's not good enough, Tyler said firmly. You're part of our family. We don't leave family behind. Over the next few weeks, we all struggled with the uncertainty of not knowing what the future would hold. Miguel had filed the necessary paperwork with the court, and Lisa had hired a lawyer to represent her interests in the custody modification hearing. The legal process would take time, but the emotional process of preparing for potential separation was immediate and painful. I found myself second-guessing decisions I'd felt confident about just months earlier. Maybe David had been right about the temporary nature of my arrangement with Lisa. Maybe I had been naive to think I could build a permanent life with someone else's family. Maybe the security I'd felt was just an illusion that was now being shattered by the reality of legal custody agreements and career opportunities. The doubts I thought I'd conquered came flooding back, amplified by the very real possibility of losing everything I'd worked to build. I started having trouble sleeping, lying awake at night imagining myself alone again, trying to figure out how to reconstruct a life that had meaning and purpose. It was during one of these sleepless nights that I heard soft footsteps in the hallway. Emma appeared in my doorway, wearing pajamas and a worried expression. Abuela Maggie, are you awake? Come in, sweetheart, what's on your mind? She settled into the chair by my window, curling up like she used to do when she was younger and had nightmares. I've been thinking about the Phoenix thing, and I have an idea. But I want to know what you think before I talk to Mom about it. What kind of idea? What if we all moved to Phoenix together? You and Mom and Tyler and me, at least until I graduate and go to college. The suggestion was so unexpected that I was speechless for a moment. Emma, honey, that's a big decision. Your mom has a good job here, a life she's built. I have my house that I'm renting out, my connections to the community. But those are just things, right? Jobs and houses and stuff like that. The important thing is being together. It's not that simple. Moving is expensive, and starting over in a new place is challenging. Your mom would have to find a new job, we'd have to find a new place to live, you'd have to leave all your friends behind. I'd have to leave my friends behind anyway, if Dad moves us there without you and Mom. At least this way, we'd all be together. But Emma, what if it doesn't work out? What if we move there, and things don't go the way we hope? What if your mom can't find a good job? Or we can't find affordable housing? Or the adjustment is harder than we expect? Then we'll figure it out together, like we always do. Abuela Maggie, don't you see? The reason our family works isn't because we live in this apartment or because mom has this specific job. It works because we take care of each other and we make decisions together. Her wisdom and maturity astounded me. At 17, she understood something about family dynamics that some adults never learn. She recognized that the strength of our relationships wasn't dependent on external circumstances, but on our commitment to each other. Have you talked to Tyler about this? A little bit. He said he'd be okay with moving if it meant we could all stay together. He's more worried about leaving you than he is about leaving his friends. And what about your college plans? UC Santa Barbara is here in California. Would you be willing to give that up? I could apply to Arizona State or University of Arizona. They have good programs too, and I bet I could get scholarships there as well. Besides, if we moved for my senior year, I'd probably qualify for in-state tuition by the time I graduated. She'd clearly thought through the practical implications, but I was concerned about the sacrifices she was willing to make. Emma, you've worked so hard to get into UCSB. That's been your dream school since you were a freshman. My dream was getting a good education so I could have a good career and take care of my family someday. I can do that from Arizona just as well as I can from California. The next morning, Emma presented her idea to Lisa over breakfast. Tyler immediately endorsed the plan, and I watched Lisa's face as she processed the possibility her children were suggesting. You kids would really be willing to start over in a new state just so we could all stay together? Mom, Tyler said. Remember when you used to tell us that home isn't a place, it's the people you love? Well, you and Abuela Maggie are home for Emma and me. As long as we're all together, we can make anywhere work. Lisa looked at me across the kitchen table, and I could see her weighing the practical challenges against the emotional benefits of the plan. Maggie, what do you think? Would you be willing to consider a move like that? The question forced me to examine my own fears and priorities. Was I attached to staying in California because it made practical sense, or because I was afraid of taking another leap of faith? I'd already proven to myself that I could adapt to new circumstances and build meaningful relationships in unexpected places. Maybe it was time to prove I could do it again. I think, I said slowly, that Emma's right about what makes a family strong. And I think I'd rather take a chance on staying together than accept the certainty of being separated. Over the next month, we researched Phoenix thoroughly. Lisa investigated nursing opportunities and found that her experience and supervisory credentials would transfer well to Arizona's healthcare system. I looked into the cost of living and discovered that housing was actually more affordable there than in Southern California. Emma researched universities and found several programs that excited her. Tyler investigated soccer leagues and discovered that Phoenix had excellent youth sports programs. The more we learned, the more feasible the move seemed. But there were still significant obstacles to overcome. Lisa would have to give up her newly acquired promotion and the security of a job she was good at. I would have to either sell my house or continue managing it as a rental property from a distance. We would all have to leave behind the community connections we'd built and start over in an unfamiliar place. The legal proceedings added another layer of complexity. Miguel was initially confused by Lisa's request to modify the custody agreement to allow her to move to Phoenix as well. He'd expected her to fight the relocation, not embrace it. I don't understand, he told Lisa during one of their required mediation sessions. I thought you'd be upset about the move. I thought you'd try to convince the court that it wasn't in the kids' best interests. I am upset about the disruption to their lives, Lisa replied. But I'm not going to pretend that your job opportunity isn't genuinely beneficial for them. What I am going to do is make sure they don't have to choose between financial opportunity and emotional stability. So you're planning to move to Phoenix too? We're planning to move to Phoenix, all of us. Maggie, Emma, Tyler, and me. Miguel's expression showed his surprise at the inclusion of my name in the family unit. During his marriage to Lisa, he'd always been cordial to me, but I'd been David's mother then, not an integral part of his children's daily lives. You want to bring Maggie with you? Maggie is part of our family now, Emma interjected. She's been taking care of us and helping us for almost a year. We're not leaving her behind. She's like our grandmother. Tyler added. The kind who actually wants to spend time with us and helps us with our problems. Miguel looked at me with new attention, perhaps seeing me for the first time as a person rather than just his ex-wife's living arrangement. Mrs. Thompson, would you really be willing to move to Phoenix for the sake of keeping this family together? Mr. Martinez, these children and their mother have given me a home when I needed one most. If they're willing to include me in their next adventure, I'm honored to be part of it. And you think this arrangement is stable? You think it will work long-term? I think it will work as long as we all want it to work. And right now, we all want it to work very much. The court hearing was less dramatic than I'd expected. Miguel's job opportunity was clearly legitimate and beneficial for the children. Lisa's plan to relocate with them demonstrated her commitment to maintaining stable relationships despite the geographical change. The judge approved the modified custody arrangement without much deliberation. What surprised everyone was Miguel's offer to help with our relocation expenses. If this family unit is as strong as it appears to be, he told the judge, then I want to support it. These children have been thriving under this arrangement, and I don't want the financial burden of moving to jeopardize their well-being. Walking out of the courthouse, I felt a mixture of relief and anticipation that reminded me of the day I'd first moved in with Lisa. We'd successfully navigated another major life challenge by working together and prioritizing our relationships over convenience or convention. Are we really doing this? Tyler asked as we stood in the parking lot, processing what had just happened. We're really doing this, Lisa confirmed. We're moving to Arizona together. All of us? All of us. That evening, as we sat around the kitchen table making lists of everything we needed to do before the move, I reflected on how much my life had changed since David had first told me I was too expensive to keep. I'd gone from feeling like a burden to feeling like an essential part of a family unit. I'd gone from having my choices limited by other people's calculations to being included in family decisions as an equal partner. The move to Phoenix would present new challenges and require new adjustments, but I was no longer afraid of the unknown. I had people who would face those challenges with me, people who valued my contributions and wanted me to be part of their future plans. David had been wrong about many things, but he'd been especially wrong about the temporary nature of my arrangement with Lisa's family. What we'd built together was strong enough to survive geographical changes and legal complications. It was strong enough to be worth fighting for and sacrificing for. As I looked around the table at Emma making college research lists, Tyler planning his new soccer career, and Lisa coordinating job applications, I realized that this wasn't the end of our story in California. It was the beginning of our story as a family that could adapt and thrive anywhere we chose to go together. 2 years later, I stood in the backyard of our new home in Phoenix, watching Tyler score his third goal of the season while Emma cheered from the sidelines between studying for her midterm exams at Arizona State University. The desert landscape was nothing like the California neighborhood I'd called home for decades, but the laughter echoing across our yard sounded exactly like family. Lisa appeared beside me, still wearing her scrubs from her shift as head nurse in the cardiac unit at Phoenix Children's Hospital. She'd not only found a job quickly after our move, but had been promoted twice in the past 18 months. The leadership skills that had made her successful in California had translated perfectly to Arizona's healthcare system. "How was Tyler's game?" she asked, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. "Spectacular. 3 goals and 2 assists. Miguel's going to be so proud when he sees the video Emma took." "And how was your day? Did the literacy program orientation go well?" I'd started volunteering at the local community center, helping adults learn to read and write. It was fulfilling work that reminded me why I'd loved teaching, but with the freedom to focus purely on helping people without the administrative pressures of formal education. Wonderful. I have 6 new students starting next week, including a grandmother my age who wants to read bedtime stories to her great-grandchildren. "That's beautiful, Maggie. I love that you're helping other people discover the joy of reading." As we watched the kids pack up their soccer equipment, I reflected on how our family had not just survived the transition to Arizona, but had thrived in ways none of us had anticipated. Emma was flourishing at ASU, where her scholarship had been supplemented by additional academic awards. She'd chosen to major in social work, inspired by our experience of building an unconventional family that worked better than many traditional ones. Tyler had adapted to his new school with the resilience that seemed to characterize his entire generation. He'd made friends quickly, excelled in his classes, and discovered a passion for desert hiking that none of us had expected. Miguel lived just 20 minutes away and had become a regular fixture at family dinners, often bringing his girlfriend Maria, who treated me with the same warmth and respect as the rest of the family. Our new house was smaller than Lisa's California apartment had been, but it felt more spacious because we'd designed the living arrangement from scratch. I had a beautiful bedroom with an attached sitting area where I could read and write, plus a small office space where I prepared materials for my literacy students. The backyard had raised garden beds where Tyler and I grew vegetables year-round, taking advantage of Arizona's extended growing season. Most importantly, we'd proven to ourselves and to everyone who doubted us that chosen family could be just as stable and supportive as biological family, sometimes more so. We'd weathered the challenges of relocation, job changes, and teenage drama with the kind of teamwork that came from genuine mutual respect and affection. The phone rang inside the house, and Emma ran to answer it. A few minutes later, she appeared in the backyard with an expression I couldn't quite read. "That was Uncle David," she announced. "He wants to talk to Abuela Maggie." I felt my stomach clench with familiar anxiety. David and I had maintained minimal contact since our confrontation in California. He'd sent a perfunctory Christmas card the first year, and I'd responded with equal politeness. But we hadn't spoken directly since the day he'd tried to convince me that Lisa was manipulating me. Did he say what he wanted? He said it was important. Something about wanting to apologize and make things right. Lisa's expression suggested she was as skeptical as I was. "You don't have to talk to him if you don't want to, Maggie. You don't owe him anything." "I know. But maybe it's time to find out what he has to say." I took the phone into my sitting room, needing privacy for whatever conversation was about to unfold. David's voice sounded different than I remembered, less confident and more hesitant. "Mom, thank you for taking my call. I wasn't sure you would." "What do you want, David?" "I want to apologize. For everything. For the way I treated you when Dad died. For the things I said about Lisa. For not understanding what you needed from your family." The apology was unexpected, but I was wary of accepting it at face value. David had always been skilled at saying what he thought people wanted to hear. What brought this on? "Jennifer and I are getting divorced." The news should have shocked me, but somehow it didn't. Jennifer had always seemed more interested in David's potential than in David himself, and I'd sensed their marriage was built on ambition rather than affection. "I'm sorry to hear that." "Are you?" "Because I'm starting to think it's the best thing that could have happened to me. The divorce process has forced me to take a hard look at my priorities and my behavior, and I don't like what I've seen." "What do you mean?" "I mean, I've realized that I treated my marriage the same way I treated my relationship with you. Like a business arrangement where everyone had to justify their value and pull their own weight. Jennifer finally told me that living with me was like being audited constantly, and she was right. I was quiet, unsure how to respond to this uncharacteristic display of self-awareness from my son. "Mom, I know I hurt you badly. I know I made you feel like you weren't worth the trouble of caring for. I've been in therapy for the past 6 months, trying to understand why I do that to people I'm supposed to love." "And what have you learned?" "That I'm scared of being vulnerable or dependent on anyone, so I try to control relationships by making other people prove they deserve my love. It's a terrible way to live, and it's an even worse way to treat family." The admission was more honest than anything David had ever said to me, but I was still cautious about accepting it completely. "David, I appreciate the apology, but I need you to understand that I'm not the same person I was 2 years ago. I'm not waiting for your approval or hoping you'll rescue me from my choices. I've built a life that works for me, with people who love me unconditionally." "I know. And that's part of what I'm calling to say. I was wrong about Lisa and the kids. I was wrong about your living arrangement. I was wrong about everything." "What makes you so sure now?" "Because I've been watching from a distance, and I can see how happy you are. Your social media posts, the pictures Emma shares, the way you all supported each other during the move to Arizona. You found something I've never been able to give you or anyone else. Which is unconditional love, the kind where people don't have to earn their place in the family every single day." I felt tears prick my eyes, not because David was finally saying what I'd always wanted to hear, but because I realized I no longer needed to hear it. His validation would have meant everything to me 2 years ago, but now it was simply a nice bonus rather than a necessity. David, I forgive you, but I need you to understand that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or pretending nothing happened. It means I'm not angry anymore, but it doesn't mean our relationship can go back to what it was before. I understand, and I'm not asking for that. I'm asking for a chance to build something new, something healthier. I want to learn how to be a better son, even if it takes years. What would that look like? I don't know yet. Maybe phone calls where I ask about your life because I care, not because I'm checking up on you. Maybe visits where I actually spend time with Emma and Tyler instead of just tolerating them. Maybe learning to appreciate what you've built instead of criticizing it. The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, with David asking thoughtful questions about my volunteer work, the kids' activities, and our life in Arizona. For the first time in years, he seemed genuinely interested in my answers, rather than looking for problems to solve or criticisms to make. When we hung up, I sat in my chair for a long time, processing what had just happened. Lisa appeared in the doorway with a cup of tea and a concerned expression. How did it go? Better than I expected. Different than I expected. Do you think he's sincere? I think he's trying to be. Whether he can sustain it remains to be seen. And how do you feel about it? I considered the question carefully. Relieved, I think. For years I carried guilt about our broken relationship, wondering if I'd done something wrong, or if I should have tried harder to make things work. Hearing him take responsibility for his behavior lifts that weight off my shoulders. But you're not planning to rush back into a close relationship with him? Trust has to be rebuilt slowly, through consistent actions over time, and honestly, my life is full enough without him. If he wants to be part of it, he'll have to prove he can add value without taking away from what we've already built. That evening, as our family gathered for dinner, I shared the basics of David's call with everyone. Their reactions were protective and skeptical, which warmed my heart even as I appreciated their caution. Does this mean he might visit us? Tyler asked. Maybe, someday, if he proves he can be respectful and supportive. He'd have to be nice to all of us, Emma said firmly. Not just you. We're a package deal. Absolutely a package deal, I agreed. 6 months later, David did visit Arizona. He stayed in a hotel rather than imposing on our household, and he spent 3 days learning to see us as we really were rather than through the lens of his preconceptions. He apologized to Lisa for the way he treated her during their marriage and after. He spent genuine time with Emma and Tyler, asking about their interests and goals without trying to manage or improve them. He even helped Tyler with a school project about family structures, listening to Tyler's presentation about how chosen families could be just as strong as biological ones. The visit wasn't perfect, but it was progress. David was learning to be a guest in my life rather than someone who expected to control it. He was beginning to understand that love meant supporting people's choices, even when those choices were different from what he would have chosen. As I write this story now, 3 years after moving to Phoenix, I can honestly say that being told I was too expensive to keep was the best thing that ever happened to me. It forced me to discover my own strength, to recognize my worth, and to build relationships based on mutual respect rather than obligation. Emma graduated from ASU with honors and now works for a nonprofit organization that helps elderly people navigate housing transitions. Tyler is a senior in high school, planning to study environmental science in college. Lisa was promoted to director of nursing and recently started dating a wonderful man who treats our family with the same respect Miguel has always shown. Miguel and Maria got engaged and asked me to be part of their wedding ceremony, an honor that still brings tears to my eyes. I'm 71 now, healthier and happier than I've been in decades. I have work that fulfills me, relationships that sustain me, and a future that excites me. I've learned that family isn't about who gave birth to you or who shares your DNA. It's about who shows up for you when life gets difficult, who celebrates your successes without keeping score, and who loves you not despite your flaws, but including them. David and I have rebuilt our relationship slowly and carefully. He calls regularly now, visits twice a year, and has learned to appreciate what I've created without trying to fix or improve it. Most importantly, he's learned that love isn't a transaction where people have to earn their place at the table every day. Sometimes people ask me if I regret the years I spent feeling hurt and rejected by my son's initial response to my financial crisis. The answer is no. Those experiences taught me that I was stronger than I knew, more adaptable than I'd believed, and more deserving of love than I'd ever imagined. My house in California was sold last year, and I used the proceeds to buy a small cottage near our Phoenix home, where visiting family and friends can stay. The cottage has become a gathering place for our extended chosen family, a space where love is the only currency that matters. The woman who was once too expensive to keep has become invaluable to the people who matter most. And that transformation began the day I chose to believe that I deserved better than conditional love, and had the courage to go find it. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.